I want to tell you a story today. I grew up the daughter of one of the most profound and prolific storytellers that I think you could ever come across. Of course, I'm partial to him because he is my father. But ever since the days of my youth, when I was a little child, I can remember my dad coming in at night to tuck my sister and myself into bed, and he would tell us some of the most imaginative tales. Sometimes they would leave us just scared to death. Sometimes we would be in tears. Sometimes it would always end happy, and we would be so glad for the story. I think that's where my love of the story began. Billy Graham tells of a time of his earliest memory as a child when he was about 2. And his father had left for a long journey. And he kept waiting for his dad to come home. And he remembers his dad coming home. And that scene in his mind is of his dad down on one knee and his arms outstretched, welcoming little Billy into his arms. If you don't think a story like that will shape the rest of your days, it will. And mine has been shaped by my father and his love for telling stories and his love of the best story ever told. When I was 21 years old, I was fresh out of college, graduated one week, got married the next week, and 2 weeks after that, packed my little Chevy Cavalier and our little small U-Haul that we had with a few belongings that we owned. And we were preparing to make our way to Columbus, Ohio, where my husband would serve in his first church. I remember that day like it was today because it was to date one of the most painful experiences, vivid experiences I have ever had in my life. I went to college in my hometown, so I never had really experienced that letting go that comes when children leave home and they move away. But this would be my first occasion. I remember we lived on a block, and the back of our house, we packed in our cars with everything that we owned, and we began to pull away. I was following behind the U-Haul, and we went around the corner. We came down to the end of the street and made the next corner. And I just, for a moment, thought, I'm going to look one last time at my childhood home. And I turned to look out the window, and I'll never forget what I saw. I saw my dad running through that backyard with his hands outstretched. I love you, Elaine. I love you, Elaine. I love you. And he followed me as far as his feet could carry. And I was just sobbing, even as I'm sobbing telling you that story right now. And it would take me several miles before the tears would stop. That was the day before cell phones, so I couldn't call him on the phone. I just had to follow my husband. I would remember those arms in a very profound way almost 8 years later to the date, when I called my daddy and I said, Daddy, can I come home? And my father said, how quick can you get here? This time I would not come home with my husband. This time I would come home alone with 2 young sons at my side. And we made that familiar trip around that block. And my dad and my mom welcomed us home. We lived with them for a short time, and then I began to work at the seminary, and as history would have it, that's where I met Billy, and would then again be called to leave my home and to move abroad to share in his life as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So why do I tell you that today on my blog anniversary? I've written about it before. My poor Bible study girls that meet with me have heard the story almost every time we meet. It's because it's a story worth telling. It's a story that mirrors my own journey with Jesus Christ, a loving Father who has welcomed me home time and time again. Even when I was yet a far way off, my Father saw me coming and he called me home. There are some of you today that need to just come home to God. Your Father has been waiting for you. He loves you. His arms are stretched out and cheering for you all the way in your journey. I wonder if today, if you would take a few moments to sit with him and let him tell you the story again Because you see, I grew up the daughter of a storyteller in the flesh. But you know what? I'm the daughter of the best storyteller of all time. And his name is Jesus Christ, and he has written his story across my heart and across my life. I hope he has done the same for you. We're going to have a